ninja warriors through the ages. The powers they hold are legendary. Over the years, the ninja forged the deadliest poison. With only one antidote, they held the power of life and death.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Duet Ninja podcast with Tony. Yeah, man.
Good afternoon.
So Tony, Antifa, what do you know about that versus the Proud Boys? Of course, you know, everybody in the world's been talking about, you know, the Proud Boys doing this and Antifa's, you know, this terrorist organizations, things of that nature. Well, what's your understanding on the topic?
Well, I did some research just to find out what the origins were and so forth, but it goes all the way back to a German anti-fascist group. But in America, the origins aren't really clear. I've seen in the news or in media, whether it's mainstream media or social media, that you know there's some backing there has to be some monetary backing, because they seem to pop up with, and they're armed, whether it's signs and, you know, they're whatever they're using to defend themselves and weapons and so forth. They're ready to go at random. And they're, you know, like the whole Breonna Taylor case we talked about last time, they had U-Haul vans. I saw videos of them unloading stuff from U-Haul vans. They were prepared for a quote unquote pop-up protest. So they're getting that money from somewhere. And the only thing that I saw was fairly consistent is that somehow it traces back to George Soros.
There we go.
So he's a billionaire, Democratic supporter. So I mean, I don't have any concrete evidence, but that's the only thing I've seen. And like I said, they have to get their money from somewhere. But they all and when I look back at kind of their older undertakings, if you will, they wore masks then. So they've always tried to like hide themselves from the public view. There weren't many opportunities for them to protest. Every now and then there would be something. Usually Portland. There was one in New York. They usually try to cause damage, but those protests, I couldn't really figure out what they were protesting. But more recently, it's really started after the George Floyd incident. They started popping up with more force, and I think it helps them because they like that. The reason I mentioned them wearing masks, even when the world wasn't under the cover of COVID, was now it makes it more easy for them.
It's true.
Like they wear masks, they wear black from head to toe, and they wear black masks, and so now they can just kind of blend in. So the first news videos I started seeing of them were around the George Floyd incident, and they were mixing in with protesters. And I know there was some claims, and I saw some videos that were suspect, in which, for example, the Minneapolis Police Department were involved in, wreaking some of the havoc. But I also read an article about, which sticking with Minneapolis, that they do that on purpose, so they can increase the level of destruction, kind of fire up the crowd, so to speak, which then gives the police the authority to come in and break it up. Yeah. But they were mixing in with I would say the people that were actually protesting, which at that time anyway, hasn't always been the case since, May 25th, but they were largely peaceful, and they were the ones that were inciting the violence. And then you get people fired up though, and then it kind of spills over. And then the mainstream media shows videos of people pouring in and out of a Target or, other stores and just, taking things, right? I mean, and I think between the police initiating some of it and Antifa adding fuel to the fire and fanning the flame, it got out of control. Yeah. And then after that, I haven't seen, it's just whatever the media reports. There's a lot of videos out there, but it seems they're involved in every protest since then. Yeah. Throughout the year. And, they've gotten they were a little more passive in the beginning. They've gotten more, they're wearing helmets, and they're wearing, bulletproof vests, and they have umbrellas which they pop
shields,
shields, and they have needles that are in they're umbrellas so they can poke people. I mean, they've become more aggressive, more combative in and more their ability to be in combat has increased over time, maybe because they don't like to get beat up. I mean, I guess that's understandable, right? If you get your ass you get your ass kicked a few times, you come back more prepared, right?
Exactly.
And so I mean, but that's what I've seen. So I can stop there for a minute. I don't know you probably. I'm assuming you've seen similar types of things, but
yeah, that's what I was gonna say, man. That's exactly what I've seen. And it is hard to pinpoint where the money is coming from, but they are well funded.
Right.
I don't know if there's like an enclosed group and they just do fundraisers, it's exactly. I mean, they say it's for one thing, but they actually funnel that money into something else that helps with the protesting and collecting gear and things of that nature. But they are wreaking havoc, and quite frankly, man, I would dare say that they're anarchists. That's their core element, not necessarily anti-fascism, but anarchy. Because they try to attach themselves to some situation, any situation that's going to force violence upon a government entity, law enforcement.
Right.
And then have, of course, that reciprocal event come, law enforcement fights back, strikes back. Right. Now you have it in the news. Yeah, man. I'm seeing the same thing, bro. And it's not problem solving at all.
Right. And you're right about the anarchy, because the original German version of it's actually longer. The word it's more than just Antifa, but they were anti-fascist, and I think it goes back to Nazi days, like they just opposed the Nazi party and Hitler's regime and so forth, and it still exists. But I think they started there, and so maybe the original purpose was maybe placed well, but it's changed over time.
Right.
And now Antifa doesn't mean anti-fascist. I mean, it might technically mean that if you looked at their charter or whatever they have that talks about who they are. Mm-hmm. They are more in terms of anarchy. They want to overthrow. They don't want. Right after the election, when it was still kind of in doubt, I saw things popping up where they didn't care who was president. They were like down with Biden, down with Trump. They just want it to be a free for all.
Right.
Which can't happen. Interestingly, I just skipped a couple places in my mind. One thing, we're going back to the money, is I read an article that they pay the people in cash by the hour to show up for these things. So the money has to come from somewhere.
Exactly.
They have a hierarchy. I guess technically I've seen pictures. They have generals and lieutenants and,
wow.
I don't know how well organized they are, but they have some sort of structure. And I've read and I've seen pictures of recruiting flyers that advertise that they will pay. And they pay, my understanding from reading some other thing, this is from second and third hand accounts, is they paid, and one of the things they paid $25 an hour cash. So you want to go out and break windows and throw rocks and stuff, here's $100 for 4 hours. Wow. Well, if you're an unemployed high school kid or college kid that gets to hide behind a mask and a helmet, who doesn't like to break things?
I mean, right? Especially that age.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there is a whole line of entertainment, like between the axe throwing and the I forgot what they call this one in Houston. They give you an axe and you wear a suit with a helmet and the face shield and everything, and you just go destroy stuff. And if you pay a little extra, you get to smash a TV. And I mean, it's just it's like venting. But that's awesome.
I mean, yes. Yeah.
But people like to do that stuff. But this is just kind of uncontrolled destruction.
Right.
And people are getting paid to do it. So why not? Instead of paying to do it, I'm getting paid to do it. And so that's even better. I've seen some statistics that it's largely, 18 to 25-year-old unemployed, either high school. There were some younger ones. I saw one of the protests. There were some politicians who were like, get these kids off the street. These kids are 14 and 15 years old. They don't need to be caught in the crossfire. And this guy was the mayor of, maybe it was Louisville. He was like almost crying.
Wow.
He was like, I can't believe these are kids and they're going to get hurt. And we need parents, get your kids off the street. They're going to get hurt. They're going to get shot. And we don't need any more of that.
No, we don't.
So So they get paid, and also I read somewhere, I don't know how true it is, that there's a lot of college graduates that are unemployed also, but some of them are teachers. I read, which I don't know if that's propaganda.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Plugging into, teachers and professors are teaching this kind of different perspective on the U.S. view of things, that we're just like the flag stands for tyranny and oppression, and it doesn't represent fallen soldiers and freedom, and I mean none of that. I mean, someone's got to learn that somewhere. Right.
Yeah, it is taught.
It wouldn't surprise me. I don't there's not enough evidence of that, but it wouldn't surprise me if it kind of makes sense if it is also true that kids are being taught these things in schools. Mm-hmm. That the people that are teaching it would also be involved on the front line.
Bingo. I've worked with people in the school system who have that type of ideology. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, and they've quieted down since the election, though.
Yeah, oddly enough.
But if somehow, we'll get to this later, somehow Trump pulls it out, I think they're going to be full steam ahead.
It's going to get ugly.
It would, and so to a certain extent, not choosing one side over the other based on political ideology, it would almost be better for just for that purpose alone. Mm-hmm. If Biden won, just to they'll find some other reason to fire themselves up if they want to, but we don't want to give them any fuel right now.
No, not now.
Another thing I noticed is they really proliferate in more liberal cities. Like, you don't see this in Texas.
I bet you don't. You don't see it in North Carolina neither.
No.
Or South Carolina or Virginia for that matter.
Right. And so after the George Floyd's from Houston originally, and after that happened, there was a peaceful march with his family in downtown Houston. They had a gathering in an area called the Green, and then they walked around and they marched around downtown, protested, all peaceful all the time. It was no problem. They were in connection with that. There was supposed to be another protest in an area called the Galleria. Mm-hmm. And rumors were that Antifa was going to be there as well. So Governor Abbott basically was like, fuck that. They had snipers mounted on the roofs. And like, these guys start throwing Molotov cocktails, you're going to pick them out of we're going to take them down. They had SWAT people there. They were standing by. If this thing got out of hand, they were going to shut it down right away. No questions asked.
Wow.
But remember, we had the CHOP or Chaz, whatever you called it, in Seattle, and then Portland, and then Chicago and New York and LA. Those are the ones where I see them stealing an Audi and driving through the front door of Versace, and and the people running in there and stealing stuff and running back out. But you see these black clothed people kind of running around in the area, always
masked up, hoodie.
Yeah. Some of the protesters aren't masked up, but the Antifa people always are.
Always are. I mean, it's clear as day. But that media coverage, man. It just, And
it makes it seem like we've talked about before how the mainstream media paints the environment in the U.S. You would think that's everywhere. It's all you see on TV. These racially motivated cop killings and the uprisings that follow and the destruction and all this kind of stuff. Yes, you would think that's the only thing that's going on, but like I said, it doesn't happen. There was a little bit of it in Dallas.
No,
there's other, and it didn't last very long. And then there were some other small towns where they had, I don't know why Antifa even went there.
Oh Lord.
There were some smaller cities or towns in Texas, and they just basically got marched right out of there.
I bet you they did. Look, he's just marching.
There's a video, it was on TikTok or YouTube or both, and I think that it crossed over. Like, I don't know which one posted first, but then they started. The longer version of it was on YouTube, and they were doing some kind of, I don't know how they got started, but all these people carrying American flags just basically escorted their asses right out of whatever Midland Tech, whatever it was. They're like, no, we're not having that here. We don't need a mayor or the police.
Get out of here.
We'll take care of it ourselves.
Yeah. I can believe it, man. I can believe it. Saying Texans don't fuck around. That's for damn sure. Oh, buddy. So Proud Boys. What did you read up on that?
Well, it looks like and I haven't. Let me back up and say I haven't seen a lot of them on TV like I did about Antifa,
not really.
because they haven't been really as involved. Like, they haven't been on the forefront of things. Although they've shown up a couple times more recently. But originally, I think it was a white supremacist group. It looks like that's the underpinnings. I forgot the guy, like one of the founders' names or the original leaders, and he was white, and he said, he's one of the guys that I'm proud to be white, and it was that kind of mental approach to things. More recently, things that I read about them and what I've seen in the news is that they're more a racially diverse group now, and they're not necessarily about supremacy as much as they're more of American nationalism. But being nationalist doesn't necessarily mean you're white supremacist. And I think that the message gets blurred. I think their approach is they believe in America and the freedom and the flag and all that, and that's why they've allowed a lot of different people into the group to show that it's not about white supremacy. Like the leader right now is a Cuban American. I can't remember his name right now either, but anyway, so it's so, were they, I can't remember this for certain. Were they at the event in Charlottesville where they had were they in Charlottesville?
I want to say there were elements of them. They might not have been there in full force, but there were elements there. Yeah. Okay.
But they didn't really stand out. And I haven't really seen, I looked for videos and so forth. I haven't really seen a lot of news coverage about them until recently. There was that Million MAGA March in DC.
Yeah.
A while back. They were there, it looked like largely to protect the protesters who were getting harassed by Antifa and other people. So, and they didn't seem to be violent. They weren't getting into fisticuffs and there was no shooting. So, I haven't seen a lot of negative. I've seen people try to paint them in a negative light, but I haven't seen any evidence of the negative aspects or the white supremacy that is claimed to be associated with the Proud Boys. Other than, the description, even if you go on there, they started that way, it was fairly consistent through, whatever source it was, that they seem to start as a white supremacist group. It doesn't seem that they still hold that virtue today, at least not in the same way. But it might be different in, you live in the Mid-Atlantic and in what was a very Confederate state. So it might be different there. Like, when I lived in the Washington, D.C. area, when you got to about Fredericksburg, about 25 miles south or 50 miles south of Washington, D.C., it went from Northern Virginia to Southern Virginia.
Real quick. And
it went from, fairly neutral, multicultural, diverse area to gun racks, Confederate flags, and, the General Lee in a hurry. And the rest of the state was like that. So, and North Carolina is south of Virginia. So the Proud Boys may have a different presence. That's why I asked about the Charlottesville, because Charlottesville's in Southeast Virginia.
Yeah.
It's the home of University of Virginia and, Thomas Jefferson, Monticello, and he started that school and everything. So he was a slave owner and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know if that's, I don't know as much about the Charlottesville event as I do others, because that wasn't as recent. This year, everything seems to stand out from this year.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It's my understanding from when I read that the Proud Boys is not a collective. It's almost like Black Lives Matter, the movement versus the organization. The Black Lives Matter organization is separate from the movement because anybody can attach himself to the movement and be completely separate from the organization. Right. It's just like the Proud Boys situation. It's my understanding that there was a collection of Proud Boys that attended Charlottesville from Pennsylvania, Virginia area, obviously, Jersey, kind of in that area, and it wasn't all the Proud Boys. It was it was pockets, people who just felt that like they needed to go. So I think the initial association with where they came from versus where they are now is still attached to it,
right?
And then it gets coupled in with the actual white nationalists or whatever who support Trump, and people just throw them in that collective and then just attach it to. Right. To that situation, but there are elements of the Proud Boys that are nutballs, bro. I mean, there's but that's in every collective that's not a unit, not a cohesive unit.
Right.
So
I
yeah,
think that's
that's
one, since you mentioned BLM, I think that's one element that is consistent through all three of those groups, is that
mhm.
they really don't have any centralized leadership.
No.
There are more factions, and it's, it's like, five arms and no head
Yeah,
kind of thing.
that's a good way to put it.
So BLM in California could be BLM different than BLM in DC or North Carolina or Texas.
Mhm.
I'm assuming there's all three of those organizations in Texas, although I've never really seen the existence of any of them in
Wow.
Texas, because we really haven't had any protests.
No.
In
I mean, like,
Texas, people like to think that Texas is just a bunch of white rednecks. Houston is
God,
probably one
no.
of the most diverse cities in the country. In fact, it's not it's a plurality. There's no one group that's, ethnic group that's a majority.
Yeah.
I think Hispanic and white are, pretty close, similar in terms of number percentages. I don't know, 35, 40%, whatever. But then Black and Asian and Indian, and depends on what part of the city you're in too. On the Southwest side, there's a lot of Indian and Asian people, because there's a lot of tech stuff out here.
Right.
And so, but it's a very diverse. I mean, it's known as having one of the best. If you want to have a culinary experience other than New York or San Francisco or Chicago,
Oh
you come to
man.
Houston. And in Houston, in addition to the Michelin chef kind of approach you get in New York, Chicago, and San Francisco, you get soul food, you get barbecue, famous places in all over Texas too.
Creole.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, man.
So, and in Dallas is pretty diverse also. That Dallas-Fort Worth metropolitan area is several million people. Houston, several million people. San Antonio and Austin have grown so much they've almost become one giant metropolitan area. That's another few million people. So there's some big pockets, and there's a lot of different people in Texas, and we get along generally. That's why I think you don't see the backlash and the outpouring of love or hate for one side or the other. Is more or less everybody gets along. And there's going to be some pockets of extremists on either end.
Yeah.
But you really don't see them. I mean, people love Texas and people love America.
That's what it should be.
It's the only state in the country that the state flag flies the same height as the United States flag.
I didn't know that.
When they negotiated their admission to the United States of America, they said, well, look, we are the Lone Star. We're the Republic of Texas. And we'll join, but we're not going to bow down to anybody. So your flag and our flag fly at the same height. And you go to the state capitol, the city hall, that kind of thing, Texas and America, they're in the middle. There's usually multiple flags, but Texas and the United States are in the middle, same height.
Interesting. I had no clue about that. That's pretty cool. And it makes sense. You know what I mean? You're a part of, you're not subservient to.
Right.
It's just completely different. Interesting.
The whole unicorn God country, it's, you're an American, you're a Texan, you take care of your family and your friends, and that's, I would say more or less that's fairly universal in the state. Very friendly, it's got some of that Southern hospitality. We're not all dumbasses. There's high end oil and gas, technology, health care, finance in Dallas Fort Worth, and obviously there's some of the best high point deer hunting in the America as well. You go into the Triangle, south of San Antonio.
Really?
Triangle, yeah.
I know that.
You get some, 100, 200, 300 point buck. I mean, big number. Trophy hunting. Yeah.
In Texas? I had no clue.
South Texas. It's a big state.
Yeah.
When you cross on the east side on I-10, when you cross in over, I think one of the first signs, and I'm sure it's for show, it says, like Beaumont, 90 miles, Houston, 180 miles, El Paso, 898 miles. It's a long
damn.
Other end of the state.
Oh man! Now I drove 40 through the northern portion, Amarillo, that area.
Right.
Heading to California, man. It was long, but wasn't that long. Jesus, 800 plus. Good Lord,
right. So
mercy.
if you go from Jacksonville, you can go from Jacksonville to Los Angeles on I-10.
Yep.
And the bulk of the trip will be through Texas.
Ain't that some shit? That's crazy, man.
Yeah, the biggest chunk, probably a third of the trip will be crossing Texas.
God almighty.
If you drove all the way from Jacksonville to Los Angeles. So when we were in college and we drove when we went to Southern California for spring break one time, when we got to El Paso, we were halfway there. We hadn't even gotten out of Texas yet. We crossed into New Mexico. We were halfway to California.
That's crazy, man.
The ninja